The divorce papers came through on a Tuesday in March. 23 years of marriage dissolved in a stack of legal documents that felt impossibly light for the weight they carried. I was 41 years old, starting over in a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Seattle, learning to live alone for the first time since college. My lawyer got the house in Bellevue. I got my car, some furniture, and enough money to cover 6 months of rent. Fair, the judge said. But nothing about divorce feels fair when you're the one sleeping on an air mattress in an empty apartment, listening to sirens wail through the streets at 2 a.m. I threw myself into work. My job at Emerald Tech required long hours anyway, but now I volunteered for everything. Like meetings, weekend projects, the quarterly reports no one else wanted to touch. I'd stay at the office until 11, sometimes midnight, because going home to that empty apartment felt worse than the fluorescent lights and stale coffee. That's when I started using rideshare apps. My car was parked in the building's garage, but after 12 hours of staring at screens and drowning in code, I was too exhausted to drive safely. So I call a car, slide into the back seat, and let someone else navigate the downtown traffic while I decompressed. I met Marcus on a Thursday in late April. His car was a black Honda Accord, meticulously clean, with a small air freshener shaped like a tree hanging from the mirror. The photo on the app showed a man in his mid-30s with kind eyes and a warm smile, 5-star rating across 2,000 rides. "Rough night?" he asked as I collapsed into the back seat, my laptop bag heavy on my shoulder. "Every night lately," I admitted, giving him my address on Pine Street, tech industry. I glanced up, surprised. "How'd you know?" He smiled in the rearview mirror. Downtown Seattle, midnight pickups from office buildings, that exhausted look in your eyes. I've driven a lot of engineers and developers. You all have the same energy after a long shift. I laughed despite myself. Is it that obvious? Let's just say I've learned to read people in this job. 3 years of driving, you start to notice patterns. Something about his voice made me relax slightly. It wasn't intrusive or judgmental, just observant and kind. "What did you do before driving?" I asked. "I was a social worker," he said, his voice shifting slightly. "Child Protective Services. Burned out after 8 years. Couldn't keep carrying all that weight, you know? So I took a break, started driving to clear my head, and somehow 3 years passed. Do you miss it?" He was quiet for a moment, navigating through a yellow light. "Every single day. But I wasn't helping anyone when I was drowning myself. Sometimes stepping back is the only way forward." We pulled up to my building, a renovated warehouse converted into trendy apartments I couldn't quite afford. "Ting. Thanks for the ride, Marcus. Take care of yourself," he said, and something in his tone made me think he really meant it. After that, something strange started happening. I'd request a ride at midnight, and more often than not, Marcus's Honda would be the car that accepted. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Seattle's rideshare pool wasn't that small, right? But by the second week, I realized he was positioning himself near my office building, logging on around 11:45, making sure he'd be available when I needed a ride. We fell into an easy rhythm. I'd slide into the back seat, exhausted from another 14-hour day, and Marcus would already have my address queued up. We talked during the 15-minute drive through Seattle's nighttime streets, small talk at first, the weather, the Mariners' losing streak, how traffic was getting worse every year. But gradually, over weeks of late-night conversations, the talks deepened. I learned that Marcus was raising his nephew, a 10-year-old named Devin, after his sister died from an overdose 2 years ago. He drove nights because Devin's school schedule meant he needed days free. The social worker salary he'd saved was mostly gone, burned through on therapists and grief counselors trying to help a traumatized kid process losing his mom. "Some days he won't talk at all," Marcus told me one night in May, his voice heavy. "Just sits in his room, headphones on, shutting out the world, and I don't know how to reach him. I spent 8 years helping other people's kids, but with Devin, I'm completely lost." Without thinking, I leaned forward and touched his shoulder. "You show up. That's what matters. You're there, and he knows it, even when he can't say it." He cleared his throat, and I saw him wipe his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Thank you for saying that." I started tipping him extra. Not a lot, just $10 or $15 more than standard. He tried to refuse at first, but I insisted. "You're getting me home safe when I'm too tired to drive. That's worth something." The truth was, those late-night rides had become the best part of my day. Marcus never pitied me, never treated me like I was broken, even though I'd started opening up about the divorce, about learning to live alone, about the crushing loneliness that hit at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. In June, I started bringing him coffee. The office had a fancy espresso machine, one of those overpriced perks tech companies use to justify long hours. I'd make 2 cups right before leaving, one for me, one for Marcus, and hand it to him when his car pulled up. First time, he stared at the cup like I'd handed him a winning lottery ticket. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice thick. "I know. But you're out here every night, helping people get home safely. Figured you could use the caffeine more than I could." After that, the coffee became ritual. I'd climb into the back seat with 2 cups and we'd drive through Seattle's downtown, past Pike Place Market closed and dark, past the Space Needle lit up against the night sky, sipping our drinks and talking about everything and nothing. He told me about Devon's small victories, a B on a math test, a smile at dinner, a joke that actually landed. I told him about my ex-husband's sudden email asking for the wedding china, about my sister who kept setting me up on terrible blind dates, about rediscovering who I was outside of a marriage that had defined me for 2 decades. "You're stronger than you think," Marcus said one night in late June, pulling up to my building. "I've watched you these past few months. You're rebuilding. That takes courage." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Some days I don't feel very courageous." "The strongest people rarely do," he replied. "But you show up every day. You keep going. That's what courage looks like." July came with Seattle's brief, beautiful summer. The days stretched long and warm, the streets filled with tourists and locals soaking up sun that would disappear by October. My work eased up slightly. Summer slowdowns meant more reasonable hours, but I still stayed late most nights. Still called for Marcus's car when midnight rolled around. "You could go home earlier, you know," he said one Thursday, a small smile in his voice. "You don't have to stay until midnight every night." "I know," I admitted, "but honestly, these rides, these conversations, they're the highlight of my day. Is that pathetic?" "Not even a little bit," Marcus replied softly. "I know. These rides are the highlight of mine too. Most passengers don't even acknowledge I'm human. They're on their phones, ignoring me completely, treating me like I'm just part of the car. But you see me, you talk to me like I matter. Do you know how rare that is?" I thought about that a lot over the next few weeks. How we'd both been lonely, both struggling, both finding unexpected comfort in these late-night drives through a city that never quite slept. It was a Wednesday night, July 26th, when everything changed. Marcus picked me up at his usual time, but something was immediately different. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, his jaw clenched, and he kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror with an intensity that made my stomach drop. "Marcus?" I said, my voice uncertain. "Is everything okay?" He didn't answer right away. Just pulled away from the curve and drove, his silence filling the car like smoke. "Marcus, you're scaring me." "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice strained. "I'm sorry, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." My throat went dry. "What is it?" "Your ex-husband," he said slowly. "David Chen. Does he know where you live?" The question hit me like cold water. What? How do you know his name? Please, just answer the question. Does he know your address?" "Yes, of course he does. He helped me move in when we first separated." "Why are you asking me this?" Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he turned left instead of right, heading away from my apartment building. "Marcus, where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk safely." His voice was tight, controlled, like he was holding back panic. "I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." Fear spiked through my chest. "You're really scaring me. I know, and I'm sorry, but you need to hear this." He pulled into the empty parking lot of a closed shopping complex, put the car in park, and turned to face me fully. In the harsh glow of the parking lot lights, his face looked haunted. "I picked up your ex-husband 3 nights ago," Marcus said quietly. "Sunday night around 11:30 am. He was drunk, very drunk, and he didn't recognize me. Why would he? I'm just another driver." I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was on his phone the entire ride, arguing with someone. At first I wasn't paying attention, professional courtesy, you know, but then I heard him say your name, your full name, and he said your address. The world tilted slightly. And then he said, Marcus pulled out his phone, his hand shaking slightly. These were his exact words. "She thinks she's safe in that apartment. She thinks the restraining order means something, but I know her schedule. I know she works late. I know when she's alone." Ice flooded my veins. "But there's more." Marcus showed me his phone, a notes app filled with dates, times, and detailed entries. After that ride, I started paying attention, started keeping logs. I've picked him up 4 more times since Sunday. Always late at night, always drunk, always on his phone talking about you. He swiped through the entries, and I watched the dates scroll past with growing horror. Last night, Tuesday night, I picked him up again. He was talking to someone, I don't know who, but he said, "I've been watching the building. I know the side entrance code. Security's a joke. I can get in whenever I want. My hand started shaking. He's been watching my building? I think so, and I think he's planning something. Marcus's face was grim, determined. 2 hours ago, before picking you up tonight, I drove past your building, just to check, just to see, and I saw his car. That silver Lexus he drives. It was parked across the street, lights off, engine running, and I saw him, just sitting there, watching your building's entrance. Oh my God. That's not all. Marcus's voice dropped even lower. I parked and watched him for 20 minutes. At 11:15, he got out of his car and walked to your building's side entrance, the one residents use with the key code, and he punched in a code and the door opened. The coffee I'd drunk earlier threatened to come back up. He has my building code? I don't know how he got it, but yes. He went inside. I waited, and 10 minutes later he came back out, got in his car, and drove away. That's when I knew I had to tell you. Tonight. Right now. But why? My voice cracked. The divorce is final. We haven't spoken in months. What does he want? I don't know, Marcus said, but I know it's not good, and I know you can't go home tonight. I sat there in his car, in that empty parking lot, my entire world spinning. The man I'd been married to for 23 years, who I'd trusted with my life, was apparently stalking me, planning something, watching me. What do I do? I whispered. We go to the police, right now. Tonight. It's almost 1 a.m. I don't care, Marcus said firmly. This man has access to your building. He's been watching you. He's been talking about you like he's stopped, his jaw clenching. Like you're a problem he needs to handle. We're not waiting until morning. He was right. I knew he was right. 5 minutes later, we were sitting in the Seattle Police Department's downtown precinct, a tired-looking officer taking our statement while a detective with sharp eyes listened with increasing attention. I told them about the divorce, about the arguments that had gotten heated near the end, about David's anger when I'd gotten the apartment instead of going back to my parents' house like he'd wanted. Marcus pulled up his detailed logs. Every ride, every date, every fragment of conversation he documented. And you're certain, he said, handle her? The detective asked, leaning forward. Not those exact words, Marcus clarified, but the intent was clear. He said she was a problem that needed solving and that he knew how to take care of it. The detective's expression hardened. Did you record any of these conversations? Audio only, Marcus said, just in case. Passengers consent to recording when they accept the ride. It's in the app's terms of service. I keep them for safety. I hadn't known that. Marcus pulled out his phone and played the recordings. We sat in that sterile police interview room, listening to David's slurred voice talking about me, about my schedule, about my building, about solving his problem. With each recording, the detective's face grew grimmer. Chen, he said when the last file finished. Do you have any idea why your ex-husband might want to harm you? Harm me? The words felt unreal. We're divorced. It's over. I don't understand. Did you have life insurance policies? Joint accounts? Anything he might benefit from if something happened to you? My blood ran cold. We had life insurance through my job. I never changed the beneficiary after the divorce. Oh God, I never changed it. The detective exchanged a look with the officer. How much? $500,000. The room went silent. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. I didn't want to mention it earlier because I wasn't sure, but during one of the rides your ex-husband was talking to someone about debt, gambling debt, a lot of it. He said something about owing money to people who don't wait for payment. Chen, the detective said carefully, we're going to need you to stay somewhere safe tonight, not your apartment. Do you have friends or family you can stay with? I shook my head, numb. My sister lives in Portland. My parents are in California. I have a guest room, Marcus said immediately. It's my nephew's room, but he can bunk with me tonight. You'll be safe there. The detective nodded. We're going to send officers to your building and to your ex-husband's address. We'll interview him and see what we find. But Mrs. Chen, I want you to understand something. Based on these recordings and Mr. Thompson's testimony, we have enough for an emergency protective order at minimum. Possibly. Charges for stalking and trespassing. This is serious. Everything happened fast after that. Officers were dispatched, statements were taken, forms were signed. Fasper. And at 3:30 in the morning, I found myself in Marcus's small apartment in Rainier Valley, drinking tea in his modest kitchen while his nephew Devin slept on the couch. Thank you, I said for the 100th time. For everything. For paying attention. For protecting me, Stop, Marcus said gently. You don't have to thank me for doing the right thing. But how did you know to pay attention? How did you know to write it all down? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his teacup. 8 years ago, when I was still a social worker, I had a case. A woman and her 2 kids. The husband had been arrested for domestic violence, released on bail, given a restraining order, standard procedure. But I didn't pay enough attention, didn't monitor the situation closely enough, and he came back. Broke into her apartment while the kids were at school. His voice cracked slightly. She survived, but barely, and I've carried that guilt ever since. The what-ifs, the should-haves, so now I pay attention. I listen when drunk people talk. I notice patterns. I document everything, because I failed once and I won't fail again. Tears streamed down my face. You saved my life. You saved mine first, he replied, looking up at me with wet eyes. You treated me like a human being. You brought me coffee and asked about my nephew and listened when I talked about my struggles. Do you know how rare that is? Most people don't see me at all. I'm just the driver. But you saw me, so I made sure to see you too. Drinking tea and waiting for the detective to call. The call came at 7 a.m. We arrested David Chen an hour ago, the detective said. We found evidence in his car, photos of your building, printouts of your work schedule, and a notebook with detailed plans for accessing your apartment. There's also evidence of the gambling debt Mr. Thompson mentioned. Your ex-husband owes over $300,000 to various bookies and loan sharks. I sat down hard on Marcus's couch. Oh my God! He's being charged with stalking, criminal trespassing, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted insurance fraud. The prosecutor is confident these charges will stick. You're safe, Ms. Chen. He's not getting bail. I don't remember what I said next. Just that Marcus had to take the phone from my shaking hands and finish the conversation. The trial took months. They uncovered David's entire plan, how he'd been tracking my schedule for weeks, how he'd gotten my building's entrance code from a maintenance worker he'd bribed, how he'd been planning to make it look like a burglary gone wrong. The life insurance money would have paid his debts and left him enough to start over. All he had to do was get rid of the problem, get rid of me, I testified. Marcus testified, his detailed logs and recordings becoming key evidence. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. David was sentenced to 25 years. Through it all, Marcus kept driving me home from work, but now I sat in the front seat, and we were no longer just driver and passenger. We were friends. Real friends, bonded by circumstance and the choice we'd both made to see each other as human beings worthy of care. 6 months after David's conviction, Devin drew a picture in school, a family portrait. Him, Marcus, and me, labeled Uncle Marcus, Aunt Sarah, and me. Marcus showed it to me on a Tuesday night, his eyes shining with tears. He asked if you'd come to his birthday party next month. He wants you there. I'd love to, I said, my voice thick with emotion. This is all because you showed kindness to a stranger, Marcus said, because you brought me coffee and treated me like I mattered. That taught me to pay attention, to care, to protect, and that saved your life. I think about that a lot now, how a cup of coffee and some late-night conversations created a ripple effect that saved my life and gave a traumatized kid an extended family. How we never know the impact our small choices make, the lives we touch when we simply choose to see people as human beings worthy of dignity and kindness. I'm 42 now, still working at Emerald Tech, still living in Seattle, though I moved to a new building with better security. But I'm not lonely anymore. Marcus, Devin, and I have dinner every Sunday. Devin calls me Aunt Sarah, and last month he told me I was his favorite person after his uncle. This makeshift family we've built from shared trauma and unexpected grace. Last week, a new developer started at my company, young, overwhelmed, clearly struggling with imposter syndrome. I saw her eating lunch alone in the cafeteria, saw her eyes red from crying in the bathroom. So I brought her coffee the next day, sat with her during break, told her it would get easier. Thank you, she whispered, looking at me with such gratitude. You have no idea what this means, but I do. I know exactly what small kindnesses can mean, or I know how a moment of seeing someone, really seeing them, can change the trajectory of a life. Because I gave a rideshare driver coffee and conversation, he was paying attention the night it mattered most. And because he was paying attention, we both found our way back to living. Both found our way to becoming people who matter to each other. Whoever you are, wherever you are, be kind. Not because you'll get something back, not because kindness pays dividends or karma keeps score. Be kind simply because someone across from you is fighting battles you know nothing about. Or be kind because that small gesture, that moment of genuine human connection might be the thing that saves them, or it might be the thing that saves you.